Okay, you're not filming yet, are you?
I am filming.
Oh, you are? Oh. Welcome! This is Emily the Songbird. I am so grateful to be here with you all today for this guitar odyssey. And how many of you have ever tried to play the guitar and it didn't quite work? Well, I know what that's like. When I was in my 20s, my stepdad gifted me this beautiful Martin guitar, and I was so excited. I was going to be able to play and express all the deep emotion that I had inside of me. And but the only problem was I was horrible. I was really not able to put my fingers on the strings in the right place, and I didn't understand the guitar. And so what was interesting is I ended up going on this quest, and I learned the patterns of the guitar, and I learned how to recognize that the guitar is actually a vehicle for our own musical expression and our own musical essence. So the song that I was playing when you entered in was the song Sweet Child of Mine, and I chose that song not only because of the words and the message. It's, you know, it's such a beautiful song about the child part of us, right? It's this rock song, but we all have this inner child and this childlike part of us that wants to express. And so I love the message of it. But it's also an amazing song to start learning the guitar with, because essentially you have, there are 3 main chords in the song. And so, you know, there are 15 what I call essential chords. And so when you break that down, there are 3 of these chords that so many songs use, which is the D chord, which is a sweet little triangle that you make. And then there's a C chord, which is actually called a C add 9. And then there's a G chord in it, and it goes back to the D. So it's this pattern. We start on the D chord, and we do it for 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, C and 2 and 3 and 4 and C and 2 and 3, G and 2 and 3 and 4 and G and 2 and back to D and 2 and 3. And we do that over and over again for the chorus. And so there are a lot of things to break down in that, right? There's the strum, which you can just do kind of like a down up strum. And then there's a couple of notes that I add on, and then there's the percussiveness of it that we can do. So if you're just beginning, it's good to start, you know, with just, and even if you're just starting from the very, very beginning, you could just play that D chord, right? You could put your first finger on the G string, your second finger on the E string on the 2nd fret, and then the 3rd finger on the 3rd fret. Now, I realize as I'm saying this, some of you may already have some experience with the guitar, but some of you may be like, fret? What is a fret? And so when I talk about that, the frets are the boxes on the guitar, and it actually starts with, this is called the nut of the guitar. So if anybody has a favorite nut, I like pistachios are my favorite nut right now, but peanuts are good too. So you start with the nut of the guitar, and then you count up. And so the first box is the 1st fret, 2nd fret, 3rd fret. And so mainly we're just working with the 2nd and 3rd fret. Pointer finger. In guitar, this is the 1st finger, 2nd finger, 3rd finger, and 4th finger. And so I put my 1st finger on the G string. There we have to go back and do the strings of the guitar. So the strings of the guitar are E, A, D, G, B, and E. And if you, it's helpful to remember, E is for elephants, A is for and, D is for dogs, G is for grow, B is for big, and E is for ears. And so, and you can practice, you know, a good practice is just going through the strings of the guitar. And if you're playing with a pick, and you can play over the sound hole, which is this part right here, you can do, you could sing the names of the strings. E is for elements. And then you could go to the next one. So that's a good way to practice it. But anyway, so pointer finger goes on the G string on the 2nd fret, and the middle finger goes on the E string on the 2nd fret, and then the ring finger goes on the 3rd fret on the G string. And so, and from there, if you're just starting out, you may just strum that D string. You might just be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3. And even backing it up even more, if you you're like, oh, my fingers aren't working very well on that D string, then what you can do is you can play the shape, and then you can put your hand on your lap, and you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, and come back up and play that chord again. And you could strum it once, 2, 3, 4, or twice. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, or you could do 8 notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then the next chord is a C chord, but it actually has an add 9 on it. You could play a C chord like this, which is fine, but you can get a little bit extra by adding that 9th, which is also the 2nd, which is a D note. And so this D note right here is that C add 9. And then you can do the same thing. So you could practice, like you could do the D chord, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Put your hand on your lap, 1, 2, 3, 4. Come back up and do that D chord. Doing it 25 times is like ideal. And I know in the beginning your fingers are hurting, and so really, really good to be compassionate with yourself and just, practice a little bit, take a break, go and do some, do something else, come back and try it again, because it does take a little while to get those fingertips in good condition. So anyway, so D and 2 and 3 and 4 and D and 2, and then go to that C and 2 and 3 and 4 and C and 2 and 3. And then if you're there, those 2 chords, just practice going back and forth. And back, and 2 and 3 and 4 and D and 2 and 3, C and 2 and 3 and C and 2 and 3. Now the next one is the G chord. Now what's so nice about this is, and the other thing I was just thinking about is, when we're holding this instrument, just really being aware of the energy that's right there in your arms. And if you're new to the guitar, it feels, I remember this, it just feels like this foreign object in your arms, and you're just like, what do I do with this thing? And it's, falling to one side and the other side. And so you just have to, you secure it. You can put your elbow there on this is the body of the guitar, and then you can feel the vibrations by your heart. And so remember, or one thing that I learned in my journey is that you are the music, and the guitar is an extension of that. So when you feel that vibration, and especially if you're getting frustrated or it's not coming easily, another really good thing is just to take a nice deep breath, right, as you're playing through, and remember the words of the song is, that it's the sweet child of mine, right? Like, so you could imagine the guitar is the sweet child of yours, rocking it in your arms, and just going back and forth. And this last chord that we play is the G chord. And the G chord, when you have your C add 9 chord, one thing when we're switching chords is you want to look for common tones. And so places where you can keep your fingers. Now, if you're going to play the full G chord, it actually has using the 4 fingers. And so what we can do is we can shift these 2 fingers. Are going to go to the A string and the E string, and there's a G chord. So all we're doing, we're keeping these 2 as common tones, and we have, these 2 switching back and forth. And this in itself is a good practice, right? Just practicing going back and forth. And just, you know, and even if you don't use this hand, you just go back and forth and back and forth. And you can hear, maybe you can hear the strings tapping as I'm going back and forth and back and forth. And so, you know, once you have those chords, you can put them together. And then you can see, I'm just giving a little bit of percussion, you know, just a little percussiveness as I'm playing. And as you go along in your playing, you can start to feel a little bit more of that groove, right? And then I'm also just adding a little bit of, you know, hammer-ons. I kind of changing my position on that G. But that's a start to give you, you know, to give you those chords, and it's a great start because there are so many songs that use that that chord progression. There's what's this one? Sweet Home Alabama, and then this is Closer to Fine by the Indigo Girls. So learning those three chords is really, really helpful in your guitar playing. And the neat thing about it is, so the guitar is made up of patterns, and essentially these shapes can be replicated all across the fretboard. And so this right here, we have these are the frets, and then the whole thing is the fretboard. And actually, if you go up 12 frets, you go up to your 12th fret, there are 2 dots there. And at those 2 dots is the midpoint of the guitar. And so everything that you learn up until that point is actually repeated after that. And up until this point, it's actually what's called the music alphabet. And if anybody plays the keyboard or the piano, it's your, you know, it's essentially the guitar has is like 6 pianos put on top of each other, and so they just start at a different note. So anyway, if you start to see that these chords right here, they're sometimes called your cowboy chords. How am I doing with time? Okay, so they're sometimes called your cowboy chords, and there are 15 essential chords that we learn down in these essentially first 3 frets. But once you learn those, you can connect those to other shapes of D, C, and G across the fretboard. So for example, like this is an A chord, which we get to in the next part of the song. Oh, sweet child of mine. I don't remember the vocals for that. But anyway, then you can actually take that A shape, and if you go up to the 4th fret and the 5th fret, so A, here's the, going up the music alphabet is a B, this is a C, and this is a D. So if you go from here, this is a D, and you go down here, this is a C, and this right here on the 3rd fret is actually a G. So you could play it to the C, here's a G, and back to D. So you could do that there. You can also do it, these are called triad shapes, and on your 10th fret, this particular shape is a D chord. You can bring that down to the 8th fret, and that is a C chord. And then we have a different shape actually that goes into the G chord, which is, look, this is actually the D shape that we did down here. So if you repeat, so once you learn these 15 essential chords down here, you can bring them up the fretboard and you can repeat them in different ways. And so like, for example, I said this was an A chord, which we have in the song, but if you bring it up 4th fret is a B, going up the alphabet is a C and a D, right? So we're using this A shape here. We're down here on this D. If we go up, if we take the D up, we have E, full step up to E. There's an F on the 5th, and then on the 7th is a G. So, you know, and it might be, I mean, this is all good to break down, right? But I'm just giving you an overview so that when you come up here, you can say, oh, this right here is a D chord. And honestly, when you go down here, this is an F chord right here. And you can move this F chord to a G, to an A, to a B, to a C, and to a D. So this is the D right here. D to C, which is the same shape, on the 8th fret. And then there's a G on the 7th fret. And then we go back to the D. So, you know, you can play it here. Or you can play it here. So you have your essential chords, the cowboy chords here, you have these triads. These right here are just repeating this, you know, this A shape. So there are a lot of different places you can play those chords, and once you start to understand the patterns, like I said from the beginning, that understanding, I got so frustrated in the beginning because I would have, you know, lots of people show me all over the fretboard what they were, you know, they would play the song, but they wouldn't be able to break it down. And so in this teaching series, I'm going to break it down. And so we'll focus on the essential chords, and then I'll teach you about the triads. And then the other neat part is the riff, right? In the beginning, that riff, which is up here on that 12th fret. And what's cool about this riff is that it's, you know, this part goes with the D chord. So that first part of the riff goes with that D chord. And then when you do the second part of it, it goes with the C chord. So you do that twice. So you have D, 2, 3, 4, D, 2, 3, 4, C, 2, 3, 4, C. And now you're up here doing the same thing. Here's the D, then here's the C. And then here, this is the G part of it. So if you're playing it together with somebody, somebody's on the D chord. You could have somebody down here. You could have somebody here. You could have somebody here. You can also do what are called power chords, which are your rock chords, right? So here's a D, C, G, back to D, right? So that's another type, another way we could play is we could rock it up even more with those power chords. And the reason they're called power chords is because they're power punched with just the root, which is the D, and then the 5th of the chord, which is the A. And so, so they're packed with a lot of power. So essentially, that's I mean, that would be a start for how you would do the song Sweet Child of Mine. Oh. She's got a smile that it seems to me reminds me of childhood memories where everything is as fresh as the bright blue sky. Now and then when I see her face, it takes me away to that special place. And if I stare too long, probably break down and cry. but that's the gist of it. So it's a really fun song, and there's so much to it that you can put together. And so I love the idea of breaking down the patterns. That was one of the things that was so fascinating to me and so frustrating at the same time. It was like, why are you going here? What are you doing here? And so, but when you start to understand that, then there's just so many different things you can do, you know? And eventually you could do, like, you could add some lead, you know, there are different scale patterns that you could add some lead to as well, and that could be really fun too. So anyway, that's all I have for you today. This is Emily the Songbird signing off and taking flight and wishing you a magical and musical day. Namaste.